Started. Welcome, everyone. We're excited you've joined us tonight for our Missouri State How to Apply webinar. Our event tonight is all about Missouri State's application. We're hoping we can give you some good information and make your application process as smooth and easy as possible. My name is Matt, and I am going to be, I would say, your presenter tonight. I will be the main host for this evening, and I'm one of the associate directors here in the Office of Admission, but I'm also joined by two amazing co-hosts, and I will go ahead and let them introduce themselves, starting with Ben.
My name is Benjamin Metzger. I'm the other associate director here in the Office of Admissions at Missouri State University.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kirsty Hunter. I am not an associate director. I'm an admission counselor, and I'm here to help with your all's questions tonight.
Like I said, the best of the best here tonight for you folks. As Kirsty mentioned, she's going to be hanging out in the Q&A, as will Ben. And that's the first housekeeping note we want to make sure and emphasize. We would love your questions. Again, the goal of our event tonight is to help you and to make this a more clear and easy process for you. So if at any time throughout tonight's event you have a question for us, go ahead and just use the Q&A tab that you have in the Zoom webinar and send that question right along. Kirsty and Ben will answer a lot of the questions in typewritten form, so they'll type out an answer for you, but there may be some questions that are really relevant to everybody, and we'll have some time at the end to possibly bring those questions up live as well. The other housekeeping note I want to give you all is that we will be, and we are, recording this webinar. It's going to be a YouTube video, and in a few days, probably early next week, we're going to send out all of the registrants the link to the YouTube video. So we understand if you can't stay the entire time, you need to head out early, or you just want this as a reference, you will get the YouTube recording. And again, that'll be in a few days, probably with the holiday, the middle of next week. One last thing before we do jump in to our subject matter tonight is I've got a quick poll for you just to help us learn a little bit more about our audience and those who have joined us tonight. So let's launch that now. And if you would, go ahead and give us your answers to these particular questions. I'll give everybody a little bit of time to read through them and select, and then we will go over our results. Okay, I'll give it just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up and we'll see what we've got. So, Ben, Kirsty, can you confirm we are seeing results for the poll? So it looks like we've got predominantly prospective Missouri State students, so that's exciting. But we do have a pretty decent percentage, about 25% of our folks here tonight are parents or family members. And then we've got a couple folks who fit in that other category. Looks like most folks, this is exciting for us, most folks tonight are planning to apply to Missouri State, but we do have a few that are still on the fence, and hopefully we can help nudge you over to our direction throughout this event. Looks like we've got predominantly about 3/4 Missouri students, but 1/4 students from out of state. And then finally, looks like about 2/3 of our attendees tonight have said they are doing dual credit. And the reason we asked that is that actually has some places where it impacts how you fill out the application. So that's why we wanted to figure that out. So thank you everybody for your responses. And with that information in hand, we are now going to launch into the presentation. So first and foremost, we're going to set the groundwork, the basics. And that is that if you're looking at Missouri State for 2022, as most of you, I believe are, the application is open now. And that's whether you're interested in spring semester of 2022, summer semester of 2022, or fall semester. All those are open, and you can apply through Missouri State's website, or you can apply using the common application. I will warn you that, first of all, the Missouri State application on our website is going to be shorter than the common application. And it's also what we're going to focus on tonight. So we will not be walking through the Common App, just Missouri State's online application. Then my favorite part, and something I do want to make sure and mention, is that if you decide to apply to Missouri State for 2022, there is no application fee. So you're not out any money just to apply and see how things go. Now, no matter what, if you're applying to Missouri State as what we would call a first-time new in college student, so that's maybe what you would traditionally think of as a freshman student, no matter what, there are two pieces of information or two things we're going to need. The first is the actual application. And as I mentioned, you can submit that online through Missouri State's website or through the Common Application. The other thing that we're going to have no matter what is your high school transcript. And that needs to be an official high school transcript. Official meaning that it came to us straight from your high school, and that could be through traditional mail. It could be through email, again, straight from your high school to us, or it could be through a number of different portals that we participate in that your high school will also participate in. So any of those will count. We just need an official high school transcript. We might not need an ACT or an SAT score. And we're actually going to talk about why here in just a little bit. But first off, let's talk about the first half of Missouri State's admission requirements. And this is what we call the core curriculum. The core curriculum is set by the state of Missouri, and it's designed to ensure that you are academically ready for success at Missouri State. And that's based on the classes you've taken while you're in high school. Traditionally, not always, but in most cases, a unit is a year. So we would be talking about 4 years in most cases of English, 3 years of math, but preferably 4, and so on and so forth. Now, again, these are here because we believe this is a good academic foundation for success at Missouri State. However, we do want you to know that there is some flexibility here. We understand, especially if you're from out of state, how do we hold you necessarily to Missouri's requirements when you aren't going to high school in Missouri? So just know that we've got some flexibility here, but that the key lesson is it's important to us you're taking rigorous classes in high school that are preparing you to be successful at Missouri State. Now, this is maybe what you think of as more likely the admission requirements, and it's what we call our selection index. And it's essentially the combination of your GPA and possibly a test score that would gain you automatic admission to Missouri State. Now you can see the far left column, we do use class rank, but so many high schools have stopped class rank that traditionally we're going to focus on GPA. And the magic number is kind of right there in the middle. It's 3.25. And the reason I call that the magic number is that is the threshold for being automatically admitted without submitting a test score. And that's why you can see those asterisks there in the ACT or SAT column, because if your GPA composite on a 4.0 scale is 3.25 or higher, then we don't need a test score for automatic admission. We will use weighted GPAs as well. So if your high school gives you a weighted GPA and that takes your GPA higher, that is to your benefit. Now, there's no reason to panic if maybe you don't quite meet that 3.25. Maybe you're in this range, the 3.04 to 3.24. We do have the option to take a closer look and possibly admit you even without a test score. But what I want to stress here is that for planning purposes, if your GPA is below a 3.25 on a 4.0 scale, you probably should plan on being able to submit a test score. And let's talk a little bit more about some of those test score parameters. As I mentioned, if your GPA is below 3.25, you do need to submit a test score. Also, if you take the test multiple times, which I know is a fun thought, I took the ACT 6 times, so I get it, I understand completely. But if you do take it multiple times, we will consider your super scores. And so that's good for you. That is a way to maximize your composite, whether it's the ACT composite or the SAT. It's really important, though, that you send us all of your scores, because if we don't have all of your scores, then we can't build a super score to your benefit. It's also important to know that if you don't need to submit a test score, that doesn't mean there isn't a benefit to sending a test score. Even though it's not required for admission, a test score can be very beneficial for scholarships. That's both our automatic scholarships and our competitive scholarships. So just be aware of that fact, even though we do have the test optional admissions policy. We also understand you might be a little concerned, you might be a little discouraged because maybe you don't meet those core curriculum requirements, or maybe you don't meet the GPA requirement for test optional, but the test never goes the way that you want it to, or maybe you don't meet the requirement both based on GPA and test. Whatever the case is, we don't want you to be discouraged. We encourage you to still apply to Missouri State because we have a number of different alternative admission possibilities. And it's not necessarily the case that all is lost, even if you don't meet the stated admissions requirements. Then the final thing I want to talk about before we actually show you the actual application is our timeline. It's certainly understandable that when you apply, you want to know, when am I going to hear back from Missouri State? Now, I mentioned the application is open, and it's been open since August 1st. However, we're just going to start actually releasing admissions decisions later this month. So it'll be in the coming weeks that we actually release our admissions decisions for 2022. And in most cases, you're going to hear within 2 to 3 weeks of completing your application. I say in most cases because we do have some times of the year that are just really busy. We do have some times of the year where, for various reasons, our volume is just higher. And September is actually one of those times. So just be aware, once we start reviewing applications in September, that we will possibly take a little bit longer to get back to you. Also, December, January are also times where that volume can get actually a little bit higher. And because of that, it could take us a little bit longer. Just know that our staff are working tirelessly, and I say that in honesty, they're working tirelessly to get you an admissions decision as fast as we possibly can. So just be aware of that. Typically 2 to 3 weeks, but if it's taking longer, it's just because we're particularly busy during that time of the year. So, and I have been notified I was going a little fast. So folks, if there was anything that you missed and you'd like me to go back to, please go ahead and put that in the Q&A. I'd love to go back and revisit anything that I might have blasted through too quickly. I am, for the moment, going to switch to a web browser and actually show you the application itself. Now, this is missouristate.edu/apply. This you could think of as our homepage for applying to Missouri State. And if you scroll down, it's first going to ask you to choose your application type. So for our purposes tonight, we're assuming everybody's here to possibly apply to Missouri State to do a bachelor's degree. And in that case, we're actually going to start the undergraduate application. The next thing we're going to need to select is when we would like to start at Missouri State. For our example tonight, we're assuming everybody would like to start for the 2022 school year, whether that's spring, summer, or fall. So I'm going to go ahead and start a 2022 application. And if you've been here before and you've saved your application in the middle, then you can go ahead and log in using the credentials that you've previously set. But for our test tonight, I am going to go ahead and create an account brand new from scratch. So you see, it's going to ask me for some information to create my profile in the application. The first thing is my email address. Then you can see my first name, my last name, and then my birthday. And this is not my actual birthday, but it'll be an easy one for me to remember. Wait, when was I born? I was born in 2003. So once I've inputted that information, go ahead and continue. Now, oh, it's recognizing my password. What will typically happen in this case is it's actually going to email you a PIN number. That PIN number will go to the email you used to create your profile. So that's the one right here. Now, once it emails you that PIN, and it's quick, you don't have to wait very long to get your PIN number. It is a 9-digit PIN, so it's pretty lengthy. But if you're using the same browser to check your email, you can actually just copy and paste, and that's pretty simple. So once it sends you that PIN, you input that PIN. It's going to ask you to restate your date of birth, just to reconfirm your date of birth. And once you've submitted that, it's going to ask you to choose a password. Now, the password requirements are pretty strict. There's going to be a list on the right side of the page when you set your password that tells you all of the requirements you must have for your password. So just be aware that you need to meet all of those requirements in order for your password to be accepted as official. And probably the toughest one, I'm just going to warn you about, is that your password needs to be at least 12 characters. So I think for some of us, that might be pretty long for a typical password. So I just want to make sure you are aware of that. Now, I have already created one. So I'm going to go ahead and just use that. Now, you can see this is recognizing that I've started a previous application, but because I want this to be a from scratch experience for us tonight, I'm actually going to go ahead and start a new application. So what you'll choose here is, and again, yours might look a little bit different, but you'll just choose create application when this opens. And then you'll choose open application. And once you've done that, you can see we are in the actual application for admission. We are pretty much going through the process as you would go through the process. I want to point out over here is your roadmap. This is essentially showing you all the steps you will go through to complete our application, from the first page, which is personal background, all the way to the last page, which is review. Now, on personal background, it's going to ask us to input our name, and you can see it's already got mine in there. Something we really do want to stress is we understand you might have a different given name than you have a chosen name. Excuse me, I didn't phrase that very well, but you might prefer to go by something other than your given name. I'm a good example of that. My given name is Matthew, but I go by Matt. If you have a chosen name or a preferred name, please give it to us. We want to use whatever name you are most comfortable with and whatever name you feel best identifies you. So go ahead and make sure you do include that when it is relevant. Next thing it's going to ask you to do is put in your permanent address. For our example here tonight, I just went ahead and put in Missouri State's address. But obviously you're going to put in your home address when you get here. And then we ask for both a permanent address and a current address. We understand most of the time that's going to be the same. And if that's the case, it's actually going to give you a button. And you can just choose the button to say same as permanent. And it will automatically fill in what you've put here, down here. And so that can really save you some time when you're going through the process that you don't have to type in both addresses independently. It's going to auto-populate your email address because that's what you use to create your profile in the application. And then also, it is going to ask you for both a primary or permanent cell phone number a primary permanent phone number and a cell phone number. Now you can see they can be the same, but it is going to ask you for two different phone numbers, and they are both going to be required in order to submit the application. So you can see I put in, that's just my office number for our example tonight. And then it also is going to ask you, would you like to receive text from Missouri State? For our test, I've said no, but I would encourage you to say yes. And the reason I would encourage you to say yes is we can send you important updates about your application by text message if you say yes and give us that permission. Next thing, it's going to ask you for your legal sex, and you can choose between female, male, or prefer not to respond. It's going to ask you, and actually I believe it will auto-populate this as well because you've already entered it from your profile, your birth date. So October 7th, 2003, your birth country, mine's the United States, birth city, I'm from Kirksville, Missouri's North Star. I know we had a couple students sign up tonight from Kirksville. I don't know if they've attended, but so go ahead and put your birth city in, and then also birth state. Next question is going to ask you about citizenship. We're assuming most students here tonight, your first and possibly your only citizenship will be the United States. And well, I guess this is a little bit different, but typically the United States is going to be your first choice. So don't trust mine here. United States is usually going to be the first option. But then also, if you have dual citizenship with another country, we do ask you to go ahead and include that. And this is actually the example where the United States is at the top. Next question is, we do ask for your social security number. Now, it's not necessarily going to prevent you from submitting your application, but we do ask for your social. And you might be asking, well, Matt, why do you need my social security number? And it's right. It's good that you are skeptical of people asking for your social security number. But I will tell you, we have a real effective or really good reason that we do ask for this. And it essentially involves your financial aid. We want to ensure that especially your federal and state need-based financial aid, which are determined by the FAFSA, we want to make sure those are processed smoothly and efficiently. And if we have your social security number on your application, then we can much more smoothly connect your admissions application to your FAFSA. So just know that it helps with financial aid processing if you do give us your social security number, but it's not necessarily a deal breaker. Next question, this is going to ask you some demographic information about race and ethnicity. So you can see I answered no to Hispanic or Latino, and you can see I also answered honestly as far as the next question as well. So once we have got to through those, we can go ahead and click continue. And now our additional information page. This is where we start talking about ourselves as a student and talking about ourselves as what type of student we are. The first question is essentially, again, trying to find out what type of student are you as you apply. So what best describes me? Am I currently in high school? Am I transferring to Missouri State from another college or university? Have I previously attended Missouri State, but don't attend Missouri State right now? Or am I not in high school, but I haven't gone to college anywhere else? We know overwhelmingly the folks here with us tonight are currently in high school. I also want to emphasize, even if you're taking dual credit, even if you're taking college credit while you're still in high school, you still select currently in high school because you are taking those classes while still in high school. So just go ahead and know that. Next question is going to ask you to choose a campus of Missouri State. Now, for some of you, that might be news that we have more than just the Springfield campus, but we do. And you can see it defaults to the main campus, but it will also give you a variety of other options where you could take classes. The reason why this matters is it impacts the academic programs offered at each particular campus. And that's the next question. It's going to ask you, what would you like to study? Now, we understand you're a senior in high school. You might not know exactly what you want to study. I graduated from high school 20 years ago. I don't necessarily know what I want to do with my life. So just be aware that the first option, if you open the drop-down box, is undeclared. And if you're not sure what you want to do, undeclared is the option for you. But you'll also notice there are a lot of majors of academic programs offered at Missouri State. And this can be overwhelming if you're just looking for one thing. So let me give you a pro tip. And that is to open the drop-down box. And if you know what you're looking for, just start typing. So let's use some popular options here at Missouri State. So let's say I want to choose nursing. I can just start typing nursing. And you'll see it'll take me to where nursing is. Or I could start typing business, and it will take me to business. Even pre-professional programs that might not be set majors, like I just know I want to be pre-medicine. I can just start typing that, and it'll take me right to where I want to go. So we understand this can be overwhelming because this is a lot of options. But again, if you know what you're looking for, just type it. Just go ahead and be business for this example, and it will take you right to what you want. Next question is going to ask you, when would you like to start taking classes? I think for most of us, that's going to be fall, but obviously you can choose what works best for you. I'm going to choose fall, for example. This then is asking me, did I earn college credit in high school? And so what that means is, am I taking dual credit? And for our example, we're going to say yes. This question here is completely up to you. And it's just essentially asking if, for whatever reason, you're don't meet the admission requirements at Missouri State here in Springfield, the main campus, would you like to be considered for admission to our West Plains campus? That's completely up to you. And for my test, I'm just going to say, I don't know. Then it will ask me, in which state I'm currently residing, so Missouri. How long have I lived in Missouri? I'll say greater than 1 year. Then it's going to ask me, am I participating in the Missouri A+ program? And obviously we want you to answer this one honestly. If you're doing A+, you say yes. I did A+ in high school myself, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I do want to emphasize that Missouri State offers a possible A+ scholarship, but we don't just take your application as proof that you've completed A+. This is the first indication to us that you are doing A+, but it will actually be your final high school transcript that validates that you completed A+ and all the requirements. So just be aware of that. It then is going to ask, are you a participant in one of these college access organizations? And you can see the different options. I'm going to answer honestly for me, which would be no. I'm also going to answer the United States military status honestly for me, which is that I'm not affiliated with the military. But if you're active duty, you're National Guard, you can go ahead and select the option that is most accurate for you. So these two questions. Now we get to the questions about possible criminal history and possible dismissal or suspension from another college. Now, it's important on these questions that you answer them accurately and honestly, not just answering them the way that you think will be the smoothest and the easiest way to answer them. The first question is, have you ever been convicted or pled guilty to a crime other than a traffic offense, or are there any criminal charges pending against you? If you need to answer yes to this question by answering honestly, you will see it's going to bring up an explanation box, and we are going to ask you to type out to explain the situation. If you can answer honestly, or if you can answer no honestly to this question, then it does not ask you for any further details. Same thing with the next question. Have you ever been dismissed or suspended from another college? And I want to stress that we're not talking about high school suspension. We're talking about a college suspension or a college dismissal. So just make sure you do pay attention to those words. If the answer is yes, then you do need to explain, just like the previous question. But if the answer is no, then there's no explanation needed, and you can just continue on to the next page. All right. So you can see it's remembering me from before, but I'm going to go ahead and do this again for your reference. Our next page here is our academic history. This is where you tell us at Missouri State the high schools you've attended. It may be just one, but it also might be more than one high school. It's also where you tell us the colleges from which you are earning dual credit. And I say colleges because we understand you might have dual credit from multiple schools. I could be from St. Louis and have credit from Missouri Baptist and from SLU and from UMSL. I need to include all of those when I'm filling out my academic history on the application. So we're going to start with high school. And I'm going to clear this out. And we're just going to start from scratch. That's good enough. So I first want to point out something in case we have anybody here tonight from homeschool, who is homeschooled. Homeschool can be tricky to find if you just start typing in homeschool, because there are a lot of different possible things with homeschool, although it's actually right there, but it could be hidden pretty easily. So we've got this handy little cheat sheet up here at the top where you could just copy homeschool code, and you see it automatically identifies that as homeschool. Now, for most high schools, you're not going to have that option of just putting in that code. And I want to show you, based on your high school's name, I want to show you an easy high school to find, and then maybe a high school that could use a pro tip. So the easy high school to find is actually right here in town, Kickapoo High School. Now, Kickapoo obviously is a unique name, and so we've only got 3 high schools in the system named Kickapoo. So the one we want is the very first one listed. Kickapoo High School, Springfield, Missouri. Easy, easy peasy. Now, also here in Springfield is a high school name that will not be easy to find, and that is Central High School. You can see the first page of high schools that are found in a Central High School search doesn't get out of the A's. So there are a lot of Central High Schools. The pro tip that I have for you is to type in more information. So I'm looking for Central High School, Springfield, Missouri. And by giving it that additional information, I'm able to find my specific high school instead of the hundreds of different high schools with Central in the name. I'll give you another example in St. Louis, Lafayette High School. A lot of high schools have either Lafayette in the town name, Lafayette in the high school name. So that's another one that can be tough to find. But if I do Lafayette High School, Baldwin, Missouri, it takes me straight to that school. So that's my tip, just to help you find a high school a little bit easier, especially if your high school does not have a distinctive name like Kickapoo. It's also going to ask us to choose the dates we attended this high school. And again, if you attended multiple high schools, you would put in that first high school and the dates you attended, then your second high school and the dates you attended, so on and so forth. For my example, I'm going to say I attended Kickapoo from August of 2018 to May of 2022, and my level of study was high school because these are high school classes we're talking about. So I'll go ahead and save that. For my example here, I also am going to take dual credit through both Drury University here in Springfield and Ozarks Technical Community College, or OTC, here in Springfield. Kind of the same thing, where you would search for the college, and you can see if I just start searching for OTC's full name, it comes up pretty easily. Same thing if I was to search for Drury's full name, it comes up pretty easily. The one place that can be tricky here is if you're looking for a college that has Saint in the name. And that's because some of them use the ST abbreviation, like the University of Missouri, St. Louis, while others write out St. Louis in its entirety. So you can see St. Louis University is fully written out, while UMSL, St. Louis, is abbreviated. My tip here is to try both. If St. Louis written out doesn't find you what you want, then maybe you try St. Louis abbreviated. But again, I'm going to go ahead and just quickly put in Drury, Springfield, and I've got my dates. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and edit that. I only took my Drury classes for senior year, so I edit the dates attended. And then, because even though I'm in high school, these are college classes that are giving me college credit, I'm going to choose undergraduate as my level of study. So now I've got two Drurys. Smooth move, Matt. We'll make one of these Drurys Ozarks Technical Community College. And again, same thing. We just choose our dates attended, whether that was just senior year, or maybe that was sophomore year through senior year, so on and so forth. And again, because these are college classes, even though they're taken in high school, I choose undergraduate as my level of study. And this is something we need to stress. If you've attended multiple high schools, you need to put all of your high schools in. If you've attended multiple colleges, you need to put multiple colleges in. And you just do that by clicking Add Institution, and that gives you another slot to add a new school. Next screen is going to ask us for our senior year courses. It's going to ask us to put in the classes we're taking senior year. We understand that might be frustrating at first. Like, man, why do I have to put in these classes I'm taking freshman year? We get it. But most of the time, not always, but most of the time, your transcript does not include your senior year classes. And you may recall that part of our admission requirements at Missouri State are the core curriculum. We are looking at the classes you've taken in high school as part of our admission requirements. And we need to know those senior year classes. So what you'll do here is you'll select the subject. You can see it's broken down into English, math, social studies, so on and so forth. If you're not sure, you can always just select other or elective as the option. And then we ask you to give us your best estimate of the class name. So maybe it's as simple as English 4 or Language Arts 4, or maybe it is just AP Comp. Maybe it is Modern American Literature. We're just asking you again to give us the most accurate name you can for the class. Then we're going to ask you for how long the class is. Is it a half year or a partial year class, or is it a full year class? English, almost always going to be a full year. Then you can see there's a checkbox here to add another class. So let's say I took a math class, and that is college algebra. And that was also a full year. So I just fill that in. Let's say I did AP American history. I'm sorry, AP US history. We would get the gist of what you put in there in that case, full year. And again, you just keep adding the classes you're taking senior year. If you are taking different classes the first half of senior year than in the fall semester versus the ones you're taking in the spring semester, we do ask you to go ahead and put in both. I know, again, that's a little bit of a hassle, but that's to help us with our admission requirements and assessing your application. Once you are done, you can go ahead and click continue. And then it moves on to the parent/guardian information page. This page is entirely optional. There's nothing that is mandatory on this page. It's going to ask you for some contact information, some college first generation status. So like, did your parents attend college? Do you have grandparents who attended Missouri State? We have a reason to ask that. No matter what, this is optional. We encourage you to fill it out because if we have parent information, that can help us communicate with parents about deadlines and other important information. But just know this is optional. And for my example tonight, I'm going to skip it. Then one of the last pages, we're coming down to the end here, is the acknowledgement page. This is just asking us to agree that the information we have inputted into this application is honest and accurate to the best of our knowledge, and that we're authorizing Missouri State to verify the accuracy of the information you have included on this application. So you read through these particular acknowledgements, you click agree. Then on the next one, you're acknowledging that we will use your information you've included and possibly your personal information in the review of your application. So you just read through that and click agree, and then we submit, continue. Next to last page is just asking us for a signature, asking us for an electronic signature to verify that what we have entered is honest and accurate to the best of our knowledge. So see, I'll put in my name and hit confirm. And now I'm at the review page. Now I'm at the point where I can submit my application. Now I could tell you we received an email. It probably doesn't feel like it because I'm walking you through every step, but we received an email this morning from a parent that literally said, we're not sure we actually did the application because it was so short. That is the full application. There's nothing else you need to worry about. You have now done the full application. If there's something missing, it's going to give you that message here. It's going to tell you you need to input in a cell phone number, or you need to check this box. It's not going to necessarily tell you that on the page where you fill in that, but it's going to tell you on this review page if there are any issues. And then what you can do is just click back to whatever page that particular piece is at and go ahead and fill in that information. Then click back to the review page. And once everything's in that needs to be in, you can click on submit application, and you have successfully submitted your application to Missouri State for 2022. Now, this is just part of the process. Remember that a complete application, and I actually don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning because I was going so fast, but I'm going to mention this now. Remember, a complete application is required for us to get back to you with an admissions decision. So when we say 2 to 3 weeks to get back to you with a decision, that means from the date that your application is complete. And complete means that we have your application, we have your official transcript from your high school, and possibly, depending on your GPA, we may also need to have a test score. So if we have everything that we require, then your application is complete, and then that 2 to 3 week ticker starts for us to be able to get back to you with an application. But when you've reached this screen and you click submit application, you've at least got this part done and you're pretty close to home free. So again, I hope this was informational, hope this was helpful to you as you go to possibly apply to Missouri State. Like I said, I'm happy to go back through some earlier things if I went too fast. Kirsty, what do you got for us?
Thank you, Matt. And maybe some of you guys were applying along with us. So if that's the case, you also just submitted your application, which is awesome. So we had a lot of questions come through as we were going through, and some of those I think would be really relevant to everyone. So I'm going to kind of recap some of those, and then we'll answer the rest of the questions that are coming into the Q&A. Please do not stop sending questions. We will stay to answer all of those that we can. So first off, if a student is still going to plan to take the ACT throughout their senior year, can they continue to send those scores, and how should they go about doing that?
Great question. The answer to that question is yes. Certainly for admission. For admission, we will continue to take, let's say you don't have necessarily the ACT score that you need to meet our selection index requirement. We will continue accepting new test scores that, throughout the school year that could possibly eventually have you reaching those admission requirements. Really, probably realistically up through the June ACT after senior year. That's typically the last one that would probably have any impact in time for the August semester to start. But for scholarships, it is a little bit different. You can continue to take the ACT to update your scholarship profile at Missouri State. But as of right now, I do want to stress this can change, but as of right now, the last ACT that we will consider for scholarship increases is the February ACT of your senior year, so February of 2022. And in the case of our most competitive scholarship, which is the presidential scholarship, it is actually the October ACT. That would be the last one that we would consider for that particular high level scholarship. Now, as far as how you can send the scores, we are one of the colleges, not every college will do this, but we are one of the colleges that will actually accept your test scores off of your high school transcript. So if your high school has your scores and sends them along to us on a transcript, we will consider that to be official. Otherwise, what you'll need to do is go into your portal on ACT's website or the College Board SAT's website and actually request to send your scores directly to Missouri State. I will warn you, and you can also do it when you register, so you can actually choose the schools to send the scores to when you register for the test. But if you don't do it that way, you'll need to go into your portal and individually choose schools to send your scores to. And I do want to warn you, there's typically a small charge from ACT or SAT for you to send your scores separately like that.
All right, a few questions, the same question have come in, so I want to just kind of restate that for sending transcripts, it does need to come directly from your high school. Typically, it's going to be your counselor who's able to send that, and it's easiest to have them email that to admissions@missouri-state.edu, which is the email that's up on the screen right now. That is the quickest and easiest way for that to come through. This may be a better question for Ben to answer, I'm not sure, but if a student has applied through the common application, will they hear about a decision at the same time as the Missouri State application, or will that vary?
That's a great question. We haven't yet started processing Common App applications. We will start that this month, and we'll be releasing decisions, probably at the end of this month and into next month.
Thank you. And can you also tell whether letters of recommendation would ever be required and what those might be used for?
I'll go ahead and take that one. Unless, Ben, do you want to jump in?
No, you got it.
So in general, for standard admission, what we would consider to be standard admission, no, we are not going to require letters of recommendation. And you'll notice when we went through the admission requirements, a letter of recommendation is not part of any of that standard admission requirement review. However, one of the alternative admission pathways Missouri State offers is called the supplemental application. And that's essentially applying for an individual review of your application. You could think of it kind of as an appeal of your application. And if you do decide to do the supplemental application process, it is going to require both an additional written sample, it'll be answers to some questions we ask you, as well as 2 independent letters of recommendation. So the supplemental application will have letters of rec as a requirement, but standard admission will not.
Thank you. I know you also briefly touched over some of our merit scholarships. So we've had some questions of just kind of basically what types of merit scholarships are offered. And then we also have a question specifically about what the presidential scholarship is and when that application deadline occurs.
All right, well, let's break this down into pieces. We'll start by talking about the automatic scholarships. And as the name implies, with the automatics, you have absolutely nothing additional you need to do. We will consider you for the automatics based on either your GPA alone, in the case of our GPA only automatic scholarships, or both your GPA and your test score. You may recall I mentioned the test score can be really beneficial for scholarships. And when it comes to our traditional automatic scholarships, that is the case. Those three scholarships are the deans, the provosts, and the board of governors, from the lowest level deans to the highest level board of governors. And again, we will do that automatically. We will look at your GPA, and we will use weighted if you have a weighted GPA, and we will look at your test score, ACT or SAT. We will use super score if you have it. And just based on your qualifications, which you can again update with test, update through February, and with GPA, actually update through graduation. Based on that, we will award you the automatic scholarship that you would qualify for. And if your qualifications increase and you get an adjustment, we will do that automatically as well. Again, we do offer the GPA only that don't require a test score, but those amounts are going to be lower. We'll be realistic about that. There are some other scholarships that are competitive. So unlike the automatics, the competitives are going to ask you to do additional work. And our top, most competitive scholarship, the presidential scholarship, is one of those competitive scholarships. It's going to have the earliest deadline. The application deadline for both applying for admission and applying for the scholarship is December 1st. So we've got about 3 months, but we do want you to be aware that that's going to be the very first deadline for any scholarship. That application is not available online quite yet, but it will be available online in the coming weeks. I do want to warn you that the presidential, again, it's our top scholarship. It's our most competitive scholarship. It requires an interview, and it's also got the steepest academic requirements. It's going to have a requirement of a 3.9 GPA or higher to be considered, and a 31 ACT to be considered. So it's going to be the steepest academically. And again, it will require a separate application that will open here in probably just a few weeks. I'm guessing later in September, but unfortunately you can't quote me on that. I mentioned earlier the A+ scholarship, so I probably should give you the specifics on that. Missouri State does offer an A+ scholarship possibility. I want to stress that it's a possibility because it doesn't combine with any of our other scholarships. So if you do earn the Board of Governors or the deans or the provosts, then you don't get the A+ scholarship on top of it. The A+ scholarship is renewable for 4 years, but it is $500 a year. So it is not necessarily going to compete with what A+ would provide you at the 2-year institution. I saw this answer asked in the Q&A, so I'm going to go ahead and mention it. The presidential scholarship is open to residents of all states. So it's not just for Missouri residents. And if the presidential scholarship amount is $15,000 a year, so that's not necessarily a full ride, but it's a lot of the total cost a student could expect. And if you're from out of state, you not only get that $15,000 a year, but you also would get a waiver of the out-of-state portion of tuition. So you're getting an additional about $8,200 of benefit just, again, by the presidential, getting the presidential on top of that $15,000 base amount. And because I've gotten started, I probably should mention it's actually very simple at Missouri State if you're from out of state to qualify or to get a waiver, for the out-of-state portion of tuition. There are 4 different criteria and you only need to meet one of them. So it's having a particular class rank. Kirsty, definitely jump in if I'm incorrect here, but I want to say that's top 50% of the class. It's having a GPA, I believe it's above a 3.25. It's having an ACT that is above a 24 or above, and then ACT, I don't necessarily remember what the SAT requirement is.
It's an 1160 SAT, but yes, everything else is correct.
And again, all you have to get the out-of-state portion of tuition waived is one of those. Not all 4, just one of those. And that out-of-state tuition is $8,200 a year as of right now for 28 credit hours. So that's a pretty darn good bargain to get the in-state tuition rate.
Thank you so much for recapping those scholarships. And I know we had a few individual questions in the Q&A, so I linked our scholarship page to every one of those questions as well. So feel free to follow that link and you can see the deadlines, the award amounts, everything like that. I also apologize if you heard my fingers clacking. I didn't mute myself as I was typing. So the last question that we have currently that I'll ask is about certain academic programs, for example, nursing, graphic design, things like that. Do students have to submit that information now, or does that happen later in the process at Missouri State?
That is a great question, and I'll admit I won't claim to be the best expert on some of those, but the answer to that question, honestly, is it depends. Some programs will be competitive admission, and that competition actually happens during your senior year of high school. So for example, Missouri State has some competitive fine arts programs. So musical theater, for instance, is a good example. Musical theater will have a competitive audition process that takes place during senior year. I'm not going to pretend that I have all the knowledge as far as when that happens. I think it's typically spring semester. Just know that certainly admissions will work with you to collaborate with those programs to help you know when the audition dates are. Plus, those programs are going to be very active in recruiting you and very active in contacting you about scheduling your audition. Again, that's things like musical theater, dance, so on and so forth. Then some programs are not necessarily direct admit. Nursing is going to be by far the largest example of Missouri State. We understand nursing is a very popular major. In fact, it's one of our most popular at Missouri State. And obviously we think we have a great program in nursing. But nursing isn't a program that you actually apply to while you're a senior. Nursing, you actually come to Missouri State and you do your first 2 years in the prerequisite foundational classes where your status is pre-nursing. You then actually apply your sophomore year at Missouri State to really enter the nursing program and the upper level classes during your third year. So you apply your second year to start your third year. So just know nursing, I think, is relatively rare in that case where you actually don't necessarily apply it first. But Kirsty, feel free to jump in if there are any that you know of where that might not be the case.
Nope, I believe that's exactly right. But just to emphasize, this application that you're submitting that we walked through tonight is only getting you admitted to Missouri State University in general. There are several academic programs that will require another application into that specific program, but that is not what you have to worry about as of right now. So yeah, we have actually wrapped up all of the questions that we have in the Q&A, but we do still have a little bit more time tonight with you guys. So if you have any final questions, anything you're curious about, you maybe missed earlier that you just want to clarify, please do not hesitate to ask those.
And are there, throw the Q&A, if there are any slides you want me to go back to from the first half, I can definitely do that as well.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. Oh, this is a very good question about Core 42. So if a student has completed all of Core 42 before applying to Missouri State, how would that classify them as far as, freshman, sophomore, and so on? And what would that affect their academic program entrance?
Ben, do you want to answer the question about Core 42 completed while in high school?
The courses completed in high school, that's a really good question. The courses completed in high school would be considered dual credit, and we evaluate dual credit just like we would courses from any other community college or university, and award credit where applicable, and certainly we cooperate with the Missouri Core 42 program. To be perfectly honest with you, I have never encountered that before, and I would need to check with the nursing program. Matt, do you have a better way to answer that?
Yeah, I honestly don't think it's probably going to change all that much with nursing. I mean, I guess if you have the prereqs complete earlier, then you could apply earlier. My understanding would be that is those prerequisite classes that are probably going to be the limiting factor to applying specifically into the nursing program, but we would love to follow up with you with an expert from nursing to certainly be able to tell you definitively. Sorry, I forgot I was putting you on the spot for that part, Ben. I thought I was putting you on the spot for the part about Core 42 being completed in high school, and not so much the nursing part of that. But I did get this question in the Q&A, so I went back to this particular page. The college access programs that we have, what we call articulation, or sorry, not articulation agreements, memorandum of understandings, MOUs with these different college access programs. And so these are the different options: Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Eastern Missouri, Boys and Girls Club, College Bound, Wyman, I forget exactly what this one stands for, please forgive me, and then KIPP schools, whether you go to that KIPP Kansas City, KIPP St. Louis, KIPP in Memphis, just a KIPP school in general. A little bit, we are getting into, we've got a few questions, I think they're a little specific to say things about programs like nursing. Again, we would love to kind of connect you to the folks in that program. I would say, and certainly Kirsty and Ben jump in, I think predominantly our main connection is with Mercy here in town for nursing graduates, but I don't think that means students wouldn't possibly work with Cox. And I should actually specify. So Mercy, which is, if you're from St. Louis, it's the same Mercy that you're probably familiar with in the St. Louis area. And then Cox are the two large hospital systems here in Springfield. And obviously healthcare, actually, possibly I think more than education. I think those might be the two biggest employers here in Springfield, are Mercy and Cox. And obviously our students have access to experiences in both of those hospital systems. I would say, maybe have a little bit more of a close relationship with Mercy.
And we did have a question that I just quickly linked something to, but it asked if every student is assigned an admission counselor, and that is yes. Even before a student applies to Missouri State, they have a designated admission counselor here on campus. So I linked our contact admissions page. It shows you all of our admission representatives, as well as what their geographic breakdown is. So you can find where you're located in Missouri or where you're located in the United States. You can find your appropriate admission counselor and you can contact them via phone, text, email, or a Zoom or phone appointment. And I believe that's all of our questions.
Well, thank you everybody for attending. Again, I hope it was an informative event. I hope it maybe answered some questions, or at least made it more smooth when you do go to do the application. Certainly, if there's anything we weren't able to really address in the Q&A, we will follow up with you in the coming days about that. One of the most important things I can remind you of is that we have recorded this, and so we will send you that link to the recording here in a few days, so be watching for that. Again, thanks for joining us. Happy Thursday night. I hope everyone has a great long weekend, and of course, the obligatory Go Bears.